Oh, welcome, Donald, to the Data Revolution tour, all wonderfully rebranded in the new Qlik colours.
Yeah.
How's it been going so far? I mean, you've done a few events already, haven't you?
I have done 4. This is my 4th event on the tour. Yeah, so I did the first one in Frankfurt. I've done Singapore, did Amsterdam, and today in London. Yeah, and it's great. I have to say, I like it very much.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, previously you worked at Qlik, and you'd have done a lot more of these then.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah, still the turnout, like about 400, 500 people here in.
Yeah, it's great
London.
actually. Yeah, it's really good to see that turnout. And the other events I've been at, they've had great turnout as well. And they've had, not only great turnout, but the people have been really engaged as well, which I think is even more important.
That's quite important, isn't it? Because I know I've done a few of them, and we've been India. We've done India a couple
together,
of times.
yeah,
A nice little tour around the Indian street food. Is that engagement? And you find that's different from country to country, don't you? I mean, India, I find they're very quiet, but actually they are very engaged.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and when you get down off that, they may be a bit quiet during the presentation, but when you get down off that stage, they're more likely to come up and actually hunt you down and talk a bit more about it.
Right, yeah.
And do you find that, I mean, because you go around the globe.
Oh, there's extraordinary patterns. I mean, so in America, people will interrupt your presentation with questions, never mind,
yes. How rude.
I was once in Finland, and a journalist wanted to speak to me afterwards because people asked questions.
Really?
It never happens. Nobody asks questions in Finland, but apparently people ask questions, and this was like a breakthrough. This is almost literally a news story, People ask questions after.
People ask questions in Finland.
Right, exactly.
Block capital exclamation mark.
So you find these cultural patterns which are really remarkable, and that's like one of the great pleasures of traveling, and it's one of the great pleasures of Actually, you can see it, especially if you do the same presentation several times. It might be a bit boring for me, but then the interesting bit is actually the fact that the engagement is so different.
Do you find that when you're doing your presentation then, do you find that you are totally scripted A to Z, or do you sort of change mid-flow depending on what the audience are doing?
It's actually very different for me. When I say I'm bored, that's not actually true. Because I try to find examples from which are relevant to local economies, local businesses, things like that. So I tend to contact the local teams in advance and have a little discussion about what's going to be relevant, what points are going to land, what not to say sometimes, things like that, kind of useful to know. So I do try and kind of localize it. I have the same message everywhere, of course. The message has to be consistent. Yeah. But you do try and kind of bring out the kind of local features. Okay. And then, of course, the other thing is you have the local content or the localization of it. But on the other hand, you are also trying to bring, to a certain extent, a kind of authoritative view. Yeah. Because if you're in Singapore, you don't just want to hear what's happening in Singapore. You want to hear what's happening in the rest of the world too. You want to bring that perspective. If you're in India, you want to hear about what's happening in New York or happening in London, of course. And so I find that kind of interesting.
So your messaging now and your presentation, I managed to grab a little bit of it, is around AI. Now, that's a very overused phrase, isn't it, at the moment? And it's like big data, it's like cloud. It tends to be everywhere, so maybe the waters are muddied. So what's your messaging around that, and what makes it real for you? That's another good point, because good presenters actually have something makes it real, energizes them.
Right, yeah. I mean, for me, so artificial intelligence, it's a greatly overused term. And a lot of what I see today called artificial intelligence is really pretty basic data mining or predictive analytics that we've been doing for years, You throw a neural net on it and you call it artificial intelligence. For me, there's 2 things about artificial intelligence that are really important. The first is that it should have a degree of emergent capability. Yeah. And what I mean by that is it's not just something which can be absolutely kind of programmed and the same input always gives the same output. Yeah. There's a kind of emergent property which comes from the fact that it's continuously learning. So the output you get this week will be different from the output you get next week. Yeah,
absolutely. And there's a dichotomy in there as well, because there's the whole thing around we're scared of, this is going to take our jobs, and people shy away from that. And then there's the other side, where actually some people will shy away from human contact, like the self-service tills in a supermarket.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
So there's that. And what's your thoughts on that?
Oh well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I knew this before I moved to America, but British are actually very restrained sometimes in doing things.
I've never seen that.
Never seen that. I have seen people, lining up in the rain, queuing up, of course, outside a cash machine, and the bank is open next door. Yeah. And why are they queuing in the rain, to use the cash machine? Because they don't want to go in and talk to a teller, because they shy away from that human engagement, And that seems to be pretty interesting. In America, I see the same thing with the self-service tills. People will go to the self-service till, not necessarily because it's more efficient, but because maybe in a sense it's less invasive, or they don't have to talk to someone.
They don't want to talk to someone. Yeah, absolutely.
But then what do you do with your life if you're not having human engagement? So the example I gave, I flew into London City Airport. I grabbed an Uber. I drove to my hotel. I had a nice conversation with the driver.
Yeah.
And we talk about Uber. We talk about what's happening in London. We talk about the building work that's going on and things like that. We have to just have a conversation. Now, if all I wanted was to get from the airport to the hotel, then of course a self-driving cab would be perfect.
Yes.
I wouldn't need to talk to anyone, or I could, phone my wife, or I could do work in the cab or something. I could do something else. In other words, I wouldn't need that human engagement and it would be fine. But then that's the question. What would I do with my time if I wasn't? When do you actually start living?
Yeah.
And that's a really strange thing for me, that we're constantly stepping back from human engagement, but stepping back into what? Stepping back into a world that's actually less and less engaged. And that really bothers me.
Yeah.
And so when I say this, that people say, will AI, kill
take
jobs,
all their jobs,
take our jobs?
take over the world.
And my answer is always this, that yes, it will kill jobs. It'll kill the jobs of people we're not interested in. And to be very careful, it won't kill the jobs we don't care about. It'll kill the jobs of the people we don't care about. I quite often say this to people and they say, oh yeah, it'll kill the jobs we don't care about. That's not what I'm saying. It'll kill the jobs of the people we don't care about.
Yeah.
It's the lack of human engagement. In other words, it's not the technology that's going to make a difference, it's us.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we make that slip from artificial intelligence to augmented intelligence.
Right.
And the story around... and it actually wraps up very nicely with the data literacy story that we're hearing now, and with the announcement today by Jordan Morrow, around the fact that we're not taking the jobs away, but we're augmenting the human ability to be able to argue, to analyze, and we're sort of someone sat on the shoulder saying, well, what about this? What about that?
Right.
So that's slightly different, isn't it? So, and the data literacy message sits very nicely alongside that.
It does. I mean, we've always augmented our intelligence.
Yeah,
and that's important. You're sitting there with your clipboard, and you've got 6 questions on it.
Yep.
You're augmenting your memory because I know you're getting on a bit. I'm getting on a bit. We can't remember 6 questions, but you're augmenting your intelligence. You're augmenting yourself. When you use a calculator, you're augmenting yourself.
Yeah.
In the same way as when you use a jack to lift a car, you're augmenting your strength. You augment your intellect with these devices, with these technologies. We've always done that. And so the idea that somehow augmented intelligence is somehow new.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the specific technology is new, but the principle of augmenting human abilities is absolutely basic.
But you can only really augment something, can you? If, first of all, we have an understanding, not a gut feeling, that's different, but an understanding of what the data means. Because if we don't understand what the data means, the augmented intelligence is going to be the thing we're going to be looking at to make the decision for us, and that's not right, is it?
Well, that's true. I mean, you actually have to be able to have, so it's not quite a gut feel, but you do need to be able to have an ability to validate what's happening. Otherwise, you can be led astray really easily by these technologies.
Yeah.
You have to have a sense of validation. That is this believable? And that requires a degree of data literacy, which I think is kind of interesting.
So in your travels, you don't just work for Qlik. When you're consultancy and so on, you travel around the world. What are you looking at? Honestly, looking at not just a buzzword that is coming up. That is something, because I'm always doing that, always sort of looking around the horizon and see, well, okay, what's going to be the next best thing? Is there anything on your horizon now that you would say that's around or coming up?
The thing that really interests me is visual analysis. The ability to just analyze images and make sense of them. Something that we do as human beings completely naturally.
Like the natural messaging we had a little while ago, wasn't it?
Right, exactly. Like natural analytics messaging. Yeah. So, there's an app that you can get. It's called Count Me, I think. I think you find it on count.me or something. Some app like that. And it literally counts things. Take a photograph of something. You can go to. So I've tried it out in various ways. I go to my log pile in my woodshed, take a photograph. It'll tell me how many logs are there.
Nice.
You can take a photograph of a herd of cows. It'll tell you how many cows. What it does is it knows how to count things, no matter what the things are. It just is able to detect patterns. Now, why is that interesting? Well, because that's actually a pretty fundamental capability that human beings can do. But now you augment that, and you can do it for any number of objects at any time, and it starts. In many cases, it becomes pretty useful. People stocking shelves, people working in warehouses, and people just having fun in a woodshed, all can use this technology. But it's a kind of fundamental technology that makes a whole lot of things much simpler when it works. And I'm really interested in this visual analysis. There's a company I've been advising which does photographic analysis of accidents with cars. So if you have you have a small fender bender, or you have a small accident in your car, or a big accident in your car, you can take a photograph. They can analyze the damage quickly enough and efficiently enough with sufficient accuracy and sufficient accuracy to allow them to take the risk of automatically processing your claim.
Oh, I see.
It's not that they're so accurate that they get it always right, but they're accurate enough to allow them to take the risk.
So it's percentages then, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Percentage of risk you've got there.
You can actually have your claim approved before the car even reaches the garage.
Nice.
It's pretty impressive. I've seen insurance companies with drones which can go up in the aftermath of storms and photograph roofs and do the same analysis. And you can get the money in your bank account before the drone touches the ground.
And funnily enough, this is driven by a natural occurrence that we're seeing all too often nowadays, aren't we? So the need and the necessity for someone to do this can drive the technological innovation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Forward.
And there's this, and one of the things is that's interesting is that it's the complexity of the natural world that the artificial intelligence is helping us handle.
Yes.
It's not, in the artificial world, it would be able to count things because things could count themselves.
Yes.
You put an RFID tag on something, and suddenly your stock taking is managed automatically. I can't put an RFID tag on every log in my log sheet.
No, you can't. And I wouldn't try.
I wouldn't try.
No.
So in some ways, the complexity of the natural world is being brokered for us by the intelligences that we're building.
Yeah, and it's fascinating for me, and this will be another subject I'd love to talk to you more about, and we have done it in the past actually, around the way the brain works, and that natural analytics thing about the way we fill stuff in and is amazing. But that's we could be another hour talking about this. So what's next for Donald then? Donald Farmer, what's up next?
Well, I'm trying to work less, but I end up working more all the time, and that's because I'm enjoying working. I enjoy
that makes an amazing difference, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yes,
and I choose to do what I do. I can always say no, and I rarely say no not because I need to, but because I enjoy it. And that is actually important because it means I get to see some technologies that are super interesting. I'm working on one project just now, for example, about how we enable financial services in the aftermath of natural disasters.
Right.
So, for example, tsunami in Indonesia recently, dramatic tsunami. Increasingly, people in the poorest part of the world, they do their banking, they do their financial services through mobile phones and cell phones. Previously, they wouldn't have had financial services. They just kept their money in their pockets or kept their money under the bed. In the case of a natural disaster, then you grab your cash and you've got money.
Yes, yeah.
Now, today, there's a great advantage that they can actually start to have real financial services because they can access them on their phone. But in the aftermath of a natural disaster, they've got no money because they can't access it.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges is how do you enable technologies that would bring financial services in the aftermath of a natural disaster to people who otherwise would have no access to them?
I spoke to Midair about that very thing, actually, where they just get a way of being able to give funds to people in the disaster area without very little physical infrastructure, but the technology infrastructure can be used.
Exactly.
So that's amazing.
In many ways, our technologies are actually quite fragile.
Yeah.
And that's a problem,
Okay. Well, Donald, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure and great to catch up in person.
Well, thanks very much, John.
And enjoy the rest of the tour. I'm sure
Absolutely,
you will.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.